It started with a letter sealed in gold trim hand delivered to a quiet estate in Delaware. Former President Joe Biden read it twice. The sender, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the 36-year-old revolutionary leader of Burkina Faso. He was inviting Biden for a private off-campara diplomatic conversation in Geneva, Switzerland, on neutral ground. No advisors, no press, just two men in a single locked room. The world didn't understand it. Some mocked the idea. What could an African soldier possibly say to the former U.S. president? But Biden accepted. No cameras followed his quiet plane ride across the Atlantic. No press recorded his quiet arrival at a small private UN facility tucked near the Alps. But what happened behind that door? What was later leaked? In a shaky, emotional video stunned the planet as Biden walked into the room. Traoré stood tall, composed, and silent. He didn't offer a handshake. Instead, he looked Biden directly in the eye and asked one question, a question so piercing, so unexpected. Biden froze, then his lips quivered. Viewers would only find out much later what was said in that moment, but by then, it would already have changed millions of lives. The room was lit with soft blue and gold lights, a neutral table between the two leaders. There was no interpreter, no coffee, no formal agenda, just Biden, Traoré, and the heavy silence between them. Traoré broke it. "You are president of the most powerful country in the world," he said slowly. "Tell me, in all your years of power, did you ever see what hunger feels like in a child's eyes?" Biden blinked. He wasn't prepared for that. Traoré continued, his voice low but steady. "I've seen children pick grain from the dirt while American drones flew overhead, not to help but to watch, to wait." Biden's face tightened. He looked away but couldn't. "I'm not here to accuse you." Traoré said, "I'm here to ask you something only a man like you can answer." Biden finally whispered, "Ask me." Then Tia opened a small weathered folder. Inside was a photo, one single heartbreaking photo, and when Biden saw it, his hands slowly rose to cover his mouth. His eyes welled up. The guards outside reported they heard a sound. No one expected Joe Biden crying, but no one knew yet why the photo was printed on old paper, slightly torn at the edges. It showed a little boy barefoot, no shirt, ribs showing, sitting in the dirt outside a destroyed village. He was holding a torn American aid box, empty. But that wasn't what made Biden weep. The boy was smiling. A broken, innocent smile, like he didn't know he was starving. "I met him once." Traoré said his name was Madu. He died 2 days after this photo was taken. There was food, just not for him. Biden's hands trembled. His voice broke. I didn't know." Traoré looked at him, not with hatred, but with something else. Something that hurt even more. "Exactly," Traoré said, "you didn't know." And for the first time in his public life, Joe Biden, who had faced war rooms, Senate floors, and decades of politics, lowered his head and whispered, "I failed him." In that moment, the world's former most powerful man was just a grandfather crying for a child he never met. But Traoré wasn't finished. He pulled out another folder, and this one had hundreds of photos. The folder Captain Traoré laid on the table was heavy, not in weight, but in meaning. Biden opened it slowly. Inside were photographs. Dozens, maybe hundreds, faces of children, mothers and elders, some smiling, some asleep, some gone. "These are not strangers," Traoré said quietly. "These are names, families, lives lost, not in war but in silence." Biden's hands shook as he flipped each photo. A young girl laying beside a dry well, a boy trying to eat grass, a mother holding her baby, eyes swollen from crying. All from Burkina Faso, all within the last 10 years. "Your drones saw these places," Traoré continued. "They reported no threats detected. But they never saw them." Biden closed the folder slowly. He whispered, "Why are you showing me this?" Traoré looked at him with a calm, steady gaze. "Because you were powerful enough to stop it, and now maybe you're free enough to listen." For the first time in decades, Biden didn't have an answer, and in that silence, the weight of forgotten lives pressed down on both men. But this meeting wasn't just about guilt. Traoré had brought something else, a letter, and it was addressed to Joe Biden by someone who had already died. Biden hesitated as Traoré handed him the aged envelope. The handwriting was neat, shaky, clearly written by someone young. "I found this in a camp. We lost to starvation 3 years ago," Traoré said. "It was never mailed. The child who wrote it died the same night." Biden opened the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a single page. "Dear Mr. America," the letter began. "To My name is Fatu. I am 9. My mom says America is big and rich. Can you please send us bread? I am hungry, but my brother is worse. He does not talk anymore. I think his belly forgot how to ask. Biden's lips quivered as he read aloud. Every word hit him like a stone. My teacher died last week. We had to bury her behind the school I used to dream about going to space. Now I just dream about rice. Silence filled the room. Fatu had died 3 years ago, nameless in an overcrowded burial site, but now through Traoré's hands she was being heard, and as Biden folded the letter, his eyes full of tears, he whispered something almost no one had ever heard him say. I think I failed more people than I realized. Traoré leaned in, not with anger, but with quiet urgency. You can still do something, he said. You still carry weight. Your voice still moves people. Biden looked defeated. I'm an old man, Captain. I can't undo the past. No, Traoré replied, but you can light the future. There was a long pause. Traoré pulled out a document from his briefcase. It was stamped with the insignias of multiple West African nations. What is this? Biden asked. A plan, Traoré said. For food sovereignty, clean water infrastructure. That isn't poisoned by foreign debt, but we need one thing. Visibility. We need the world to listen, and no one listens until someone they know speaks. Biden looked up slowly. You want me to be your voice? No, Traoré said. I want you to amplify theirs. Biden took a deep breath for the first time in the meeting. He nodded, not out of pity, but respect. He extended his hand. And this time Traoré took it. The world hadn't seen this moment yet, but a junior staffer in the building recording secretly. From a hallway crack had captured it all, and what she did next would set the internet on fire. The 48-second video wasn't supposed to exist. It was shaky. Recorded from a narrow crack in the conference hallway by a junior staffer named Leah Jacobs. No one noticed her. She had just come to drop off water, but when she heard Biden whisper, I think I failed more people than I realized, she froze. Then she hit record in the video. Biden's voice cracks, his face turns away from the camera, but the tears are unmistakable. Traoré is seen handing him a letter and then softly saying, You still have a voice. Use it for those who lost theirs. Leah didn't plan to post it, but that night as she lay in bed and rewatched the video, her chest tightened, something in her broke. It wasn't just about politics anymore. She uploaded it to X Twitter anonymously with one caption, This shook me too. My soul, the world needs to see what real leadership and humility look like. Biden Traoré Africa Matters. Within 2 hours it had 12 million views. By morning 40. The world wasn't just watching, it was weeping, and across continents people began asking a haunting question. What happened in that room? The White House scrambled, phone lines buzzed, news outlets flooded with requests. International leaders sent inquiries. The clip had exposed something raw, a moment that felt too human to be staged. CNN called it the most vulnerable moment in Biden's post-presidency, but no one, not even Traoré, had said anything publicly. That silence made the clip feel even more sacred. Meanwhile, in Burkina Faso, Captain Traoré remained calm when asked by journalists about the video. He responded with only one line, Truth speaks louder when it's not shouting back in Washington. Biden was in his Delaware home avoiding reporters, but inside he was restless. That letter from Fatu haunted him. He placed it on his desk. Beside a photograph of his late son, Beau, his hand hovered over his phone. Then he called Traoré. Captain, I think we owe the world more. Traoré's voice was steady. Then let's speak together. Plans for a joint statement began, but Traoré made a quiet request. Before they faced the media, Biden must meet someone, a man who lived through the very hunger the world had ignored, and that meeting would shake Biden even deeper than the letter. His name was Madu. He was 54, but hunger and war had aged his face. Beyond recognition, his eyes held stories no book could contain. Traoré brought Biden to meet him in a quiet, secure facility in Ghana, far from cameras, press, and politicians. Mamadou sat on a bench with an empty wooden bowl in his hands. It wasn't symbolic, it was his only bowl, the same one he'd begged with for 11 years. I don't need money, Mamadou said gently when Biden tried to offer him help. I need the world to stop forgetting. He held up the bowl. This, he whispered, is louder than any microphone. Biden's breath caught. Traoré stood silent beside them, letting the moment speak. For a long time no one moved. Then Mamadou reached out and placed the bowl in Biden's hands. Now it's yours, he said. Do something with it. Biden looked down at the bowl. It wasn't just wood, it was responsibility, and as he gripped it tightly, a tear slid down his cheek again. But this time it wasn't from guilt, it was from resolve, and what Biden did next would surprise even Traub. 3 days after meeting Madu, Biden sat in a quiet hotel room in Accra, the bowl still in his hands. He hadn't slept, he hadn't eaten, he just kept watching the viral clip, the one the world now called the tear herd. Voice echoed from outside his window, singing, "Biden stepped to the glass." A group of children played barefoot. It's soccer on a dusty lot, laughing, but one of them, a girl, wore a shirt with bold black letters. "I am not forgotten," Traoré said, so it stopped. Him cold, this wasn't politics anymore. It was personal. His security detail warned him not to go outside, but Biden didn't listen. He walked barefoot into the lot, bowl in hand. Cameras caught it instantly. He handed the bowl to the little girl. "Can you hold this for me?" he asked. She looked confused, but nodded. Then she smiled. That photo of a former U.S. president giving an empty bowl to a child who believed again went more viral than the first. It was no longer just a clip. It was becoming a movement. Back in Burkina Faso, Captain Ibrahim Traoré reviewed reports from his intelligence team. He had seen the image of Biden and the little girl. He studied it in silence. Then he closed his laptop and made a quiet phone call. "Prepare the round table," he said. "The world is finally ready to listen." 3 days later, in a humble hall in Ouagadougou, Traoré and Biden sat side by side before a crowd of African youth leaders, social justice activists, and foreign policy figures from every continent. There were no gold chairs, no flags, just 2 chairs, 1 mic. Traoré spoke first. "I invited President Biden not just to witness, but to feel," and he did. He wept not because he is weak, but because he remembered what strength without empathy becomes. The room went silent. Then Biden stood. He held up Mamadu's bowl again. "I came thinking I would offer help," he said, "but I was the one who needed healing. There wasn't a dry eye in the room." But then Traoré leaned in and said something privately to Biden that made him freeze. Cameras caught it, but no one heard it. Whatever it was, Biden's hand began to shake. Reporters rushed to decode the silent exchange between Traoré and Biden, but Biden wouldn't speak of it. Instead, he flew back to the U.S. and visited a grave. It was in a small cemetery in Delaware, unmarked, old, weather-worn. He bent down and laid the bowl beside the tombstone. A camera crew, allowed in by special permission, asked, "Whose grave is this?" Biden wiped his eyes and finally whispered, "Samuel." Then he walked away. Within hours, internet detectives and historians worked to find out who was Samuel. One thread buried deep in government archives told the truth. Samuel Mensah, a Ghanaian exchange student in 1963. Brilliant, ambitious, he wrote letters to senators pleading for aid for his starving village. He met a young senator named Joe Biden. Biden promised to help, but the system didn't listen. Samuel died of malnutrition 2 years later. Biden never forgave himself, and somehow Captain Traoré had known. That's what he whispered. His name was Samuel. "He waited for your help," the world gasped back in Washington, D.C. Biden opened an old leather box. He hadn't touched it in decades. Inside was a letter dated July 4th, 1964, yellowed paper. Shaky handwriting. "Dear Senator, you said you'd write. My people are waiting. You have no water today, but I still believe in your voice. Please don't forget us. Your brother Samuel Mensah." Biden trembled. The memory came crashing back. A college visit. A smiling boy with big dreams, a promise made in passing, but the system swallowed that boy's voice. And Biden had moved on until Traoré reminded him on live TV during a follow-up interview. Biden did something he hadn't done before. He read Samuel's letter aloud. Then he broke down crying. Millions watched, and at that moment the world saw not just a president, but a man broken by regret and awakened by truth. And Traoré, he was watching too in Ouagadougou. He whispered to an aide. Now he remembers. 1 week later, Captain Ibrahim Traoré stood before the United Nations. The room was packed. Leaders, reporters, youth delegates, everyone was waiting to hear what he would say after the moment that changed Joe Biden. But Traoré didn't read a speech. He held up a photo. It was Samuel, young, proud, smiling beside a young Joe Biden. The hall fell silent. "I do not stand here to ask for charity," Traoré said, voice calm but thunderous. "Africa is not poor. It has been robbed for generations." Gasps rippled through the room. He continued, "I did not break Biden with anger. I broke him with the truth and the truth has the power to heal even those who cause the wounds. There was no applause at first, just stunned silence, then standing ovation, but Traoré didn't smile. He simply stepped down, walked away, and left the room. A new gravestone had been erected. This time it had a name: Samuel Mensah, 19481965. You were heard at last at the ceremony. Biden stood alone, no press, no fanfare. But across the world something extraordinary was happening in Burkina Faso. Children were painting Samuel's name on school walls in Ghana. Youth leaders launched the Promise Kept initiative to fund rural schools in his name. And in the U.S., a new education bill was passed with bipartisan support for foreign student access and aid. The bill was named the Mensah Traoré Global Youth Act. Biden signed it with trembling hands. Then he looked into the camera and said just 5 words. I finally kept my promise. The moment went viral, and for the first time in decades, the world didn't see nations divided, they saw hearts united. And in the middle of it all stood a man named Traoré, quiet, steady, and unapologetically righteous. The world had seen many political speeches, but nothing like this. As part of a final public event, former President Biden invited Captain Ibrahim Traoré to his hometown of Scranton, Pennsylvania. The media expected politics. What they witnessed was something else entirely. Inside a small community hall packed with students, veterans, and immigrants, Biden slowly walked to the stage. Traoré followed, calm and quiet. Biden turned to him and said on a trembling mic, Captain, I owe the world one last favor, but I want you to lead this moment. Traoré stood, his voice soft yet unshaken. Then let it be known, we are not here for a photo. We are here for memory, dignity, and healing. He pulled out a journal. It was Samuel Mensah's diary, retrieved from an NGO worker who had saved it during the war. Traoré began reading a few lines. The room grew completely still. And then the tears came. Not just Biden's veterans wept, mothers wept. Even the cameras trembled because every word echoed truth, loss, and unspoken promises from generations past. My only request, Traoré said gently, is that we never lie to the children again. That final moment, Biden reaching for Traoré's hand, was caught on every network in the world. But one camera didn't blink. A young filmmaker, 17-year-old Amina from Detroit, had been recording the visit for a school documentary. Her footage, raw and unedited, went viral. In it, she captured the seconds after the applause when the microphones were off. Biden whispered to Traoré, "You are the leader I always wished I could be." And Traoré's response, "Then show them it's not too late." The video exploded on social media. Hashtags like Bamensah's dreamed on, truth and power, and Trop. Biden moment trended worldwide. Teachers began showing it in classrooms. Young people in West Africa started organizing leadership camps. Artists painted murals of the handshake in his Palo Sol and Sutu for the first time in decades. The story of a forgotten boy and the bond between two unlikely men became a movement. And Amina's documentary, it was nominated for an Oscar. She titled it The Room That Wept. 2 years later, on the border of Burkina Faso in Ghana, a monument was unveiled, not made of marble, not guarded by soldiers, but surrounded by children. It was a simple stone wall etched with hundreds of names, names of forgotten dreams, untold stories, and voices silenced by conflict, poverty, or politics. At the top, just 5 words: he promised, he remembered, we rise. Standing quietly in the back of the ceremony were Biden and Traoré. No speeches, no press, just 2 men who had once faced each other across a cold diplomatic table and now stood shoulder to shoulder. A child walked up to them holding a photo. It was Samuel Mensah. The child asked softly, was he real? Traoré bent down, smiled, and said he was the beginning of everything. As the camera panned out, you could hear the wind and the voices of children singing in 3 languages. Not a dry eye remained, not a heart untouched. If this story moved you, if it made you cry, hope, or think differently, don't just scroll, hit that like, tap, subscribe, and comment below. His name was Samuel, and he changed the world.